I'm your host, Tim Curley, and I'm joined by my
co-host Colton.
From man's sweat and God's love, beer came into the world. Amen.
Welcome back to the Go to Hell podcast. Strong opinions weekly held about Christianity, pop culture, and beer. I'm your host, Tim Curley, and I'm joined by my co-host, Colton Pierce. How's it going?
It's going good. Well, it's not going too great. I mean, I think we talked about it on the show before that I'm a dormant Lakers fan, so it's never good to watch the Celtics win a championship.
Yeah.
So it's okay. Although, if I'm being honest, I wasn't really rooting for Dallas either, because, I mean, I watched Nowitzki kick my team's ass a couple of times, so I don't have, like, great feelings for Dallas either. So, but other than that, doing good. I'm still on summer break. I'm Mr. Mom right now. Loving every minute of it. I'll be gone to Disneyland next week, so that's going to be interesting, taking a 9-month-old to Disneyland. If any of you are going to come at me and be like, who the hell takes a 9-month-old to Disneyland? She's not going to remember any of it. I'm well aware. This wasn't my choice. My parents are coming in from Seattle. My sister's coming in from New Orleans. And what was the activity that they wanted to do? They wanted to all go to Disneyland. So my sister's kids are at that age. They're like 8 and 9, like 7, 8. Sorry for not knowing their ages right off the top of my head. I know I'm not a great TO, but so they're all going. So this will be a good time for my sister. This is going to be like her last chance to really go when they're like kids. So that's really cool. And we want to be supportive of that. But meanwhile, we've got a 9-month-old going into Disneyland, and she just knows how to smile at everything. So that's pretty much all we got. So we'll navigate that headache and that stress-induced family vacation for a couple of days, and then we'll be back at it next week. I said that I'm just going to hang out at Ballast Point, which is in downtown Disney the whole time.
Hell yeah, that's what I did the last time I went.
So my parents keep rolling their eyes, and I'm like,
I spent one day in Disneyland, and then the next day I said, I'm out.
It's probably going to be my third day, because we have 2 days in Disneyland, 1 day in California Adventure, and California Adventure is going to be like the day in the middle. So I'm going to... On the third day, I'll be like, all right. They're like, what does everybody want to do? We can go re-ride rides. And I'll be like, I'm going to revisit Ballast Point. And I'll be there all day. So if anybody wants to hang out with the baby, you can meet me there for a beer or whatever, and you can see her, because I'll make sure she's fed and happy. So.
They're going to have you take the baby?
No, they won't. They won't let me do that. I'll be like, no way.
To say, is that the whole? Yeah, okay.
I'm just saying, hey, it'll be air conditioned. There'll be plenty of food at her disposal. That'll be like the greatest vacation for her of all time. So, how are you, Tim?
I'm doing well. What do we just have? Father's Day was pretty good. That was quiet. We did stuff on Saturday. Kids were in and out, but we were in the pool, and then Sunday, Nick and I went to church and did a few things around the house, and then watched the NASCAR race late in the afternoon for us. It was late afternoon, early evening, and so I had a good time. So other than that, we're hitting the dog days of summer for sports. It's NBA's over. NHL is basically over. I think that's going to be over maybe tonight. Coming up, and NFL's done until the end of last week of July. So it's really just baseball and some golf and
soccer,
motorsports, and soccer does start up the international tour of the United States with various English Premier teams and a few other teams from Bundesliga and the Spanish league. Those are always a little pain in the butt for me to cover because you got to find out who to contact, and that changes from year to year. So,
Yeah.
but so pretty good.
That's awesome.
So what are we drinking?
We're drinking quite a few things tonight. All half pours. But we are drinking the Nesting Pear IPA from Smog City Brewing Company. It is brewed in support of the Bay Foundation. Nesting Pear IPA is your passport to an easy drinking hop adventure. Snappy and refreshing, this West Coast IPA has a pale hue, delicate body, and a crisp profile of tropical fruit with a bright hoppy finish. Nesting Pear IPA takes flight as we support our partners, the Bay Foundation, in rehabilitating California's coastal dunes and restoring the habitats of endangered plants and animals. If you'd like to know more about the Bay Foundation, you can go to santamonicabay.org. And it is delightfully crisp.
It is. This is good.
Yeah.
This is kind of what I've been asking for lately. This is like an old school West Coast IPA.
Yeah, but I would love to sit. Maybe just the fact that it's just talking about the Bay. I was like, I would love to sit up on top of a beach establishment out in the sunshine and the nice coastal breeze and drink this beer all afternoon. So,
was it Pacific Beach
pub? Yeah,
pub. They call it. Was it PB Beach House? It was PB Beach House.
yeah,
Or my friend's establishment, Epic.
yeah. It's just something about having a beer right next to the
Where's
coast.
Smog City? It's in Torrance, isn't it? It's either that or Redondo. I wonder if it's near the ocean. Torrance doesn't really have beaches, I don't think.
Well,
If I remember correctly. Redondo certainly does.
I think we looked this up before. We might have to look it up again. Because, yeah, it's not on the can.
You'd think Smog City, the name, it'd be like right downtown, but
I thought it was an LBC for the longest time. I think they have like a tap room there or something. Because I think Will lived in Long Beach when he was working for Smog City.
began brewing beer at the Tustin Brewing Company, which is Orange County.
Oh, interesting.
What are you doing here, Google? Yeah. This is compelling podcasting.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, here we go. Founded by Jonathan Porter and Lori Porter. Yeah, they're currently in Torrance.
Which is where? For all the people that don't know.
Torrance is called the South Bay area of Los Angeles. It's 2 or 3 towns. It's 3 towns south of LAX, Los Angeles Airport. So it's between Redondo Beach and there's a peninsula called Palos Verdes. So it's right there. So I lived a year in Palos Verdes. That's a great part of Los Angeles to live in. You get it's perfect LA weather. Oh, what you would think is LA weather because it's by the beach, so it rarely gets cold. It rarely gets too hot. You usually get a breeze. Certain parts of that area, fog rolls in even in the late afternoon, even in the summer. So it's close to what San Francisco living is, but warmer. But it's a great part of town. Very, very much a surf culture. Even if you don't surf, people wearing shorts and long sleeve sweatshirts like Colton does.
Yeah. Yep, yeah.
But I really enjoyed my year living there. That was my 8th grade year. So All right. What are we listening to? Where are we at on the Rolling Stone 500? Sorry, Apple 100 list.
Apple Music 100 list. We are. I think you're at your low 50s now. You're 51. Is that what you said?
I am 53. I'm on Rolling Stone's Exile on Main Street.
I am on 60. The Velvet Underground and Nico. By the Velvet Underground and Nico.
Yeah,
it's always fun. We're making our way through. Albums have continued to get better and better as we go through. We were kind of talking about that before this. I think a standout for me this week is, so if you're playing along and you know where I was last time, you know that I haven't made a ton of progress. I was on Portishead 67 and I'm barely at 60, so I've been about an album a day. It's just over the weekends I don't really listen to much music because I'm not commuting anywhere or doing anything. And I got a baby at home, so blasting music isn't always like an easy thing to do. But really enjoyed album 65, 3 Feet High and Rising by De La Soul. A nice, funky, late 80s
I knew you'd
rap
like
album.
that album.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great, funky album. I thoroughly enjoyed that album. I thought the three guys going at it was really fun. They just it just seemed like they put out a rap album and just had a lot of fun doing it. So it was great. I thought it was awesome. And then just as a minor shout out, and I mean we're gonna talk about them when they come up, but really was surprised by Love Deluxe by Sade.
Sade.
Sade, is that what it is?
Sade.
And that one was awesome. It wasn't anything that blew me away, but I think just based off of my expectations of what I thought going in and what I listened to, I was really I thoroughly enjoyed that album. I will be listening to it again. And I don't know if it's just maybe this week or that I've been listening to, or maybe it's just in the 60s, 70s. Golly, is there a lot of 90s music, like early 90s music, I feel like, on this list. So I don't know if that's also a thing going into our discussion coming up when we discuss some of this stuff.
Yeah.
A lot of late 80s, early 90s, it feels like. Not saying that those weren't good years for music. I'm just saying that it's an observation I've been making. I keep seeing 92, 91, 96, 88, 89. So just kind of interesting. How about you, Tim?
Yeah, I agree. We've hit the part of the list where maybe a lot of these albums aren't necessarily top 100 material, and we'll break that down when we do our show. But enjoying, I can't remember the last album I didn't enjoy. Anyway, I would say the one this week that kind of stood out was The Cure's Disintegration album. And partially because if you've watched any movie from the 80s, and it's not like the 80s are probably different than they are today, but music absolutely was, you listen to one kind of music, and if you listen to another kind of music, you did it in quiet, and you didn't tell your friends about it. Like, if you were part of this group, you listened to this music.
Yeah.
You were part of that group, you listened to that music. There was no crossover, and doing so was seen as like a betrayal to your tribe. At least that's the way it was in my experience in Southern California. So, at my high school, it was the depressed kids who wore black and were trying to mutilate themselves that all listened to The Cure. And so I didn't start listening to The Cure until the 90s, and even then just never fully appreciated them. Probably eventually enjoyed their hits. So this album really, I kind of felt like I'd cheated myself when this album came out. I think in 89 is when that album came out. It is fantastic. The music's fantastic. So really enjoyed it, and gonna listen to it again. In fact, the first 2 songs on it are spectacular. I listened to them multiple times in the last 2 days. Just
Nice.
Cranking up the speakers as loud as I can in the house, and just blanketing myself with the sound that they're generating in the studio. So it's interesting. I when I'm listening to it in my office, I have one of these Apple speakers, which is a Harman Kardon speaker. It's not the best in the world, but it's also fairly good.
Pretty damn good.
And
it hits
last
bass
night
really well.
I listened to them in my latest generation AirPods, and if you are listening to this and you want to listen to the Cure, that album that I'm talking about, it's The Cure, Disintegration. Do not listen to it with headphones unless you have professional grade headphones. Crank up your speakers. That is meant to. It's a Phil Spector Wall of Sound album. It is meant to crank up and just listen to it very, very loud with a good set of speakers, assuming you have some. But probably whatever you have is better than even your AirPods. So anyway, I'm enjoying this list, and I think it's good. It's a good thing kind of pointing out. I already told Colton when we're done with this, I'm probably going to work my way through the Rolling Stones 500. I don't know that I'll do everyone on the 500 list, but I will go through, and when I feel like I'm looking to be challenged a little bit or haven't listened to something in a long time, re-listen to an entire album. But listening to albums and not just digesting things in playlists has been very good. So, and I think this is why people do book lists and things like that too. It's just like, we're going to be disciplined. We're going to read something I wouldn't normally read, so I'm going to go by somebody else's list and let them expose me to something that might be outside of my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Because I'm definitely listening to way more hip-hop than I ever would.
Right.
All right. We're going to have a What the X, but that's going to lead into the main topic. Can we do a quick hot topic first?
Yeah, let's do it.
I want to relive this whole Caitlin Clark thing. Because it is not dying.
Ha! What? You mean when they played the Chicago whatever again, that it didn't go away?
It didn't go away. The media's not... I mean, look, a lot of this is the media is... I mean, you could be really cynical about it and say this is ESPN itself trying to act like they're having some internal civil war about who's right and who's wrong in order to further gin up ratings. If that's what they're doing, I think they're morons. I don't think anyone's showing up at these games because Stephen A. Smith is beefing with
every black NBA, WNBA girl that he
whatever.
can get on there.
They're showing up for her.
Which, by the way, I enjoy Stephen A. Smith.
I do too. I agree with him probably half the time, but when I disagree with him, I think he's wrong. I think he's still been thoughtful.
Uh-huh.
And look, I appreciate. I don't think he's just being bombastic.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times he'll say something and I disagree, but I'm thinking, I don't think he didn't draw straws with the person that he's arguing with, and he had to pick the moronic argument for the day, and so he's just arguing it for argument's sake.
Yeah,
I think he's got strong opinions like I do, and so he's making his case, and so
I think
I don't think he's operating from a pure, like a lot of African American hosts. I don't think he's not cliched in his thinking.
Yeah,
he's willing to step out and criticize his own people, so to speak, to use a bad phrase, and say, "No, I'm not falling in line with this. I disagree with it."
And he does have biases.
He does have biases.
If you have not noticed that he's not a Packers fan and that he's not a Knicks fan, then I'm sorry you haven't been paying attention. Like,
he's also very hard on the Cowboys, but I think it's because he's a Cowboys fan and he's really angry. But Yeah, I mean, he's got his biases, but so do I. So, you know, somebody said the other day that everybody has that Jesus died for everybody, and I said except for Raider fans. So
Nice.
it's true.
I feel like I've heard that from several pastors living in California. So.
Yeah, well, there's truth.
It came from the pulpit, therefore it's true.
It's from the third book of Maccabees. So,
all right. So anyway, sorry to distract with the Stephen A.
so
conversation.
look, and I think part of the problem. The reason why I want to bring this up is everyone is wanting to. Or I think a lot of people are. I think some people are like, I don't. Can we not make everything about race? It's something else going on here. And somebody said something within the last couple days. I think she's a former player. There's no way she still plays. Candace Wiggins.
Yeah.
She came out and talked about how she was hazed like crazy for being straight. Well, I think I appreciate that being said because the reason why I want to talk about this is because we live in a world where everyone gets to run around and wag their finger at men and talk about toxic masculinity, and I think what's going on more within the WNBA circles, and it was going on before Caitlin Clark was even in the WNBA. There was WNBA players basically telling her before she ever stepped out on a court, like, don't bring your game here because it ain't going to work. You're not that good. So the jealousy was already set in. So to me, this is more toxic femininity, if you will. It's just mean girl crap. That's all this is. It's just, you've been invited to the cool girls part of the cafeteria, and we don't like it, and we're telling you you're not welcome here.
Yeah. And, here's also something I don't think, and everybody's got an opinion when it comes to Caitlin Clark. And so, some of it's really frustrating. I do appreciate that there are people in the African-American community that are popular or well-known in athletic culture that are backing up Caitlin. So LeBron James has said really great things about her. And he was even everybody in the WNBA, people are watching it because of Caitlin Clark.
Right.
He has that kind of opinion. Serena Williams was giving her some backup the other day because she got a lot of hate from girls in the WNBA about how it's you should be using your platform to speak out against hatred and bigotry. And Caitlin was just I stay off social media. I'm not really trying to listen to any of that noise and all that kind of stuff. It's not worth my time. I just want to play basketball. Which 100% I completely understand.
Yeah.
And what's funny is that, and not to, I think that this is something that is very common right now in where we're at in the world. I think that a Caitlin Clark, or any, no, I want to say any, and I'm gonna say this, and this may be controversial, but I feel like white athletes especially, or white individuals are pacified. We are not allowed to speak on topics. So it's funny that it's just kind of funny that somebody's coming in and saying you should be speaking out against this, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, nope, that's not how it works. And I think we've talked about it on the show before, maybe a year ago or something, where we talked about how almost as white people, we're almost not allowed to have an opinion, because we have hate coming in from all sides, and it's elevated when you were talking about that toxic masculinity. If you are a white male, nobody wants to hear from you.
Yeah.
Nobody. And so it's just kind of okay, so you put your head down and you just get to work and all that kind of stuff. And so what you're seeing from a lot of these white males across the board is that a lot of the stuff that they're just posting or what they're using their platform for is, if they use it at all, it's just to make themselves look, it's all very surface level. It's just kind of, okay, I'll just do a little funny thing here and there, and then, like, you know, I'll just present the image that I'm, you know, whatever. They don't talk about things that are controversial or whatever, because they get put into a box and they can get canceled for it. But meanwhile, on the other end, people can say whatever it is that they want about other people, and they could be like, no, they're justified in saying that because of X, Y, and Z. And so that's one of the hard things that I think when it comes to Caitlyn, especially when she's getting a lot of hate coming into this. I applaud her very much for having the head down workhorse mentality of just like, yeah, I'm not really here to play games. She's not leaning into it. She is a lot of people's hero for that. But again, there's girls in the league that are like, why wouldn't you speak out against this? And it's been kind of frustrating. That hasn't gone away. But I do want to say that I really appreciate that there are people, like, again, with Serena Williams, that are just saying, hey, I think it's good that you're not on social media and that you're not going through all this. And I fully support you in that. And because I think that there needs to be people that are also in Caitlyn's corner, so that way she doesn't feel isolated. As to the whole bullying thing, she took a hard foul the other night.
Yeah, can I just say, I think that I saw that foul. The foul itself, I thought was, all right, yeah, it was a hard foul, but I didn't think anything dirty. Now, Angel Reese then, I think, stuck her foot in her mouth afterwards, and then rather than just say, I fouled her hard, I mean, I wasn't like, I wasn't throwing an elbow. I was just like trying to hit, block.
Yeah, it wasn't what had happened the previous
correct
time, right? It wasn't like that.
It
was a hard foul. Yeah, and I love Caitlyn for her post game interview where she was just like, yeah, I think she was just going for the ball.
Yeah,
and
she was
just
going for the ball,
and she just clocked
me.
But
like, Reese had to turn this thing of like, again, I'm a victim because I wasn't getting any calls and my team wasn't getting any calls. Just like, no one feels sorry for you. It's this.
Well, and also she does. No offense to Angel Reese, but she's. I've watched her highlights, and there are a lot of Angel Reese highlights out there right now. By the way, because it's the rivalry right now, so people are trying to compare. Okay, so what are we? They're comparing. So you see lots of Caitlin Clark highlights paired with Angel Reese highlights. I do have to say my biggest frustration about Angel Reese is, if she was my water polo player, I would be dragging her ass out of the pool every single minute of every game, because I do not appreciate players that throw their hands up in the air and look at refs and ask them to solve their problems for them.
Right now, just so we're being even about this, Luka Doncic does the same thing.
100%. I was like, no, that's. I hate that in a player. I hate that in a player.
I absolutely do myself.
Drag your ass. I will literally drag your ass out of the pool. Yeah. I will be like, until you figure out how to not, until you figure out that the refs are not the problem. And I was like, you let me worry about that.
Exactly. When refs are a problem, let the head coach handle it. Refs never respond to players. You can, as a coach, you can get a call on your side if you handle it correct in a certain way with refs, to be like, Johnny, that wasn't a foul. That wasn't a foul. And Johnny knows, yep, shouldn't have blown that whistle, but refs are never supposed to take something. You can't take it away as a ref, because then that just
and they already blew the whistle.
That removes all credibility. So
yep.
So Johnny will make sure the next time he will not see that hold or whatever that goes your favor. But players, refs do that, and it's refs see that as them, you trying to show them up.
Yeah, exactly. And so for Angel Reese, is just I don't think you're doing yourself like what you said, where it's I'm gonna blame the refs and all this kind of stuff. We're not getting any calls. She gets that technical, and I was like, if you're gonna say, she didn't say it on there, but when she made that comment right there, it was like, okay, so Like, was this like a retaliation like aspect? And almost like she made it seem like, oh, they call that one, but they won't call it down the court. And it's like, yes, we are going to watch that 20 times by the end of the weekend, and we can clearly see that that was a hard foul. Like, I think that she won. I think she was trying to play for the ball. She missed it. She clocked her. Yeah.
To your point, just from a practical standpoint, if I was her coach and she afterwards said that wasn't fair, that shouldn't have been a flagrant, I would say to her, you're correct. And you know why it turned into a flagrant? Because you won't shut your mouth. And so they're quite willing to. It doesn't have anything to do with who you hit. It actually has to do everything with you, because you won't shut up. So they're more willing to turn it into a flagrant.
Well, and that's also the other part, is where if you're Chicago, if you're Indiana, when you go into those games, you have to know now, because of what happened previously, it's not like the refs are going to be like, oh, that was just an isolated incident. It is now, they have been told by the commission that when they go to those games, they are going to have to be, because it can't just be a fucking brawl. Like, they can't just let that happen. So it's like, okay, I was like, it's the same thing that umpires have to do in fucking baseball, right? Yeah. I was like, when the Astros when they cheated, and then the first thing Joe Kelly does when he gets one of those Astro batters up is he throws behind him. What, he got like an 18-game suspension in a 60-game season during COVID or whatever. Yeah. It was like he was going to miss a third. He missed a third of the season for that shit. But again, that's what they do. When the first series that the Mets and the Dodgers had after Upton slid into the second baseman, and like that's why there's no longer like a sliding rule, or there's now a sliding rule in place because Chase Upton just straight up slide tackled the hell out of the second baseman while he was trying to throw to first. The Mets immediately got that pitcher thrown out the first series because he tried to throw at Chase's head. He threw one shot, and there's great manager and umpire audio of them all blowing their top at each other, and literally the manager at the Mets was like, you got to let us have our shot at him. Did you see what he did to him? He's been out for 6 months or whatever. It's like, and so, yeah, the umpires are like, we got to shut this shit down. Like, we're going to let you try and play fair, but the second something goes up, like, again, we're not having a brawl. And so it's the same thing in this basketball situation, is like, you have to be on your game, play good defense, and you can't, because what happened previously, that should have never happened on a professional basketball court.
No, and that's when was she thrown out for that one?
That's when they got the flagrant 2.
She should have been tossed out of the game and suspended for a couple games for that one.
Well, isn't that a flagrant 2 is a toss out of the game?
I don't know what it is in the WNBA.
But. Yeah, but it was like, no, because I think she was still on the court. But yeah, that was like, what the fuck is that? Like, the play wasn't going on, and meanwhile just decides to completely backcheck another player. Yeah,
and then her bench stood up and cheered her on. Like, it's one of the things I find frustrating. If you want to be the heel, then play the heel. Don't play the victim. Just be like, yeah, you know what? I've been rivals with her my entire career. I don't like her, or like I don't have anything against her, but I've played her hard. I'm always gonna play her hard, and just be like that.
Yeah.
And then it's like, great, now we got ourselves a good old wrestling.
But I'm not answering no Caitlin Clark questions.
But I'm gonna act like I'm the one who's the victim. And again, I think it's a group of women who are upset, and it might be because Caitlin Clark's white. And I mean, I don't know if you saw Charlemagne the God on Mar. They were talking about it. And Charlemagne was saying, well, look, she was as good, if not a better player in college, but half the people are showing up at her games versus Caitlin. And then Bill Maher said, okay, but we all went out and watched Serena and Venus Williams and Tiger Woods. And Charlemagne was like, yeah. And then so Bill was like, So, so it's just like,
or Michael Jordan, or
yeah. So
I, in my opinion, I don't think the jealousy. I do think that she does have a slight bit of the Eminem effect. I don't have a problem with, or the Elvis Presley effect or whatever, where I think that some of her followers or or some of the people that are following her, and you can say, when I say some, you could say 30% of her followers are only following because they're like, yeah, it's a white girl that can jump, or it's a white girl that can shoot, or whatever. I do think that there is an element of that in African American dominated sports. And hopefully, just so we're clear, I hope that African Americans can also get behind that and feel that same way about when they're not in African American dominated sports. So if there was a black hockey player that was tearing it up, and all of a sudden it seems like there's a lot of black people that are supporting hockey out of nowhere. I hope that you go and you support for somebody that you feel like resonates with you and your culture and where you come from and that kind of stuff.
See, I think you hit on. I think the culture's the thing that I think that's the key.
Well, and so I think that that's part of it, but
because the aforementioned black athletes that were
Tiger
supported,
Woods, Serena Williams, those are black and white dominated sports.
But they were also people who, at least on the outside, behaved with middle class, what some people would call white culture values, where they weren't, you know what I mean? They didn't come across like they talked from the ghetto. They didn't lean into what. And if you're listening to this and you're offended, I'm sorry. You can't have it both ways. You can't be like, hip hop and this defines black culture. This is black culture. And then when you say, well, that's black culture and some people don't like it, well, that's offensive. No, that's just culture. That doesn't have anything to do with white folks or what your color is. So if you want, I think it's just partially that. I think it's because I mean, Caitlin Clark might swear like a sailor off the court. Who knows? But she probably listens to hip hop like most other athletes do, but she comes across as humble. She speaks like she's got a very good education, which she should have at Iowa. Yeah. She comes across as humble, and I think that's the kind of thing where suburban wine moms and dads are pushing their little girls to go to these games to say, like, I want you to be like her.
100%. I would
and you know what? Candace Wiggins was like that when she played.
Yeah,
It's not a race thing. It's a culture thing. It's like, I want you to act like that because she's successful. She can get a job at a corporation. It's just, again, if you're offended by this, it's like, I'm sorry. That's just how the country is still. That is the culture that dominates. You talk a certain way, you behave a certain way. And certainly, you walk in any Wall Street office, yeah, there's a bunch of dickheads who are all arrogant pricks. I get it. But by and large still, what parents want to do is be that person.
Yeah.
Which is what white dudes wanted from their kids when they're supporting Tiger. Who, by the way, Tiger always said, and still says, he's 1/8 black, but yet he's a black athlete. But anyway, act like that guy.
Well, and yeah, 100%. I would take my daughter to go see Caitlin Clark play. And again, this is where I think also what's part of it is, and where the jealousy comes from is, I don't think that race is a really big part of the girls in the WNBA. I hope that it's not.
No, I think it's more. I agree. I think it's what Candace Wiggins said. I think it's more of a non-lesbian thing. I do think that is a thing, but
I think it's
But that might be just hazing, which happens in any sport, male or female.
I just thought I think again I think there is a jealousy of talent. And I think that part of it was like, yeah, I get the idea of like, don't come in here and think that you can run the show or whatever because you were a hot shot in college. I think plenty of other sports think that about the girls, and there's probably been plenty of girls that have come up from college and think that they're going to do hella good, and they come on a team, and And here's also something that's 100% true about girls athletics. I don't ever in a million years want to be a girls head coach.
Oh no,
because
no.
I don't want to deal with that drama. I don't want to deal with any of that shit. Because it gets brutal and it gets nasty. And yeah, there's like a pecking order and all that kind of stuff. And so what that girl said, again, I see that as a senior thing. There's plenty that have done that. What fucking Michael Jordan said it to Kobe Bryant: "You can wear the shoes, but you'll never fill them," or whatever. When they first like squared off with each other, right? Like, there's plenty of time for them to be shit talking each other, and all that kind of stuff. Caitlyn has obviously been proving them wrong since she's gone in, and now
she seems to be the one who's least phased of anybody, including you and me. Which, I mean, I don't really spend that much time on it.
Yeah.
If I didn't have a microphone in front of my face, I don't know that I'd talk about it unless maybe it came up at Kauai. But since it did, it was another thing to bring up of.
It's not going away.
It's not going away. But yes. My main thing was what I said originally. You know, we spent a lot of time talking about male toxic. What was it? What's the phrase?
Toxic masculinity.
Toxic masculinity. There you go. Thank you. And we spend very little time focusing on the traits of the fair sex, and they have theirs as well. So, and they can be just as toxic. Again, if you find this confusing, then watch the movie Mean Girls. So,
fantastic movie and a very good, accurate representation of girlhood in high school, in my opinion. As somebody who has been an observer of that, as somebody who has been in high school with a sister who was a part of athletics, also a part of, growing up. We moved towns, that kind of stuff.
Easy A is another one that's also
Easy
really
A,
good.
also fantastic. I think that one explores a lot of that.
The slut shaming,
the status that sex holds in high school that's a great one,
and how it can boomerang and bring you up and bring you down.
Yeah, those are. And
if you're listening to this, well, boys are bullies too, yes, but boys do it physically. What Mean Girls does is
it's psychological.
They do it psychological, and to what Colton said, they do it by putting you in your pecking order.
Yeah, and it's so Mean Girls is fantastic. I would recommend. I think with parental supervision, you should. I think all parents should watch those two movies, parental supervision, with their freshman, sophomore high school girls. Like I'm just like, they're in it. They're in the throes of it. I wouldn't watch that with the junior high. I think the topics are a little too, for a junior high girl, like that's too much. But by freshman, sophomore year, they need to have watched that movie because they need to really know what junior and senior year is going to be like. Because it's freshman and sophomore year, you're still kind of finding your way. Some of them are still dabbling in the sex, the relationship kind of area, that kind of stuff. But then junior and senior year, it really takes flight on the cattiness. You've been stuck in. There's been multiple relationships that have happened throughout high school. You're now kind of maturing up into that adulthood kind of thing, and so. Yeah, both of those are really good ones that I think that high school girls should probably watch. Again, with parental supervision, watch it with your child, and then just be like, "How'd you like it?" And they'll probably say like some of these fun stuff, and then I'd have a conversation with them about it.
Yeah.
Just be like, "Yeah, what did you think about this? Like, didn't that suck? Do you feel like that's kind of how high school is?" And they'll be like, "Yeah, I feel like it kind of is in like some like this way and that way," and you're like, "Oh my gosh, that's so true," or whatever.
Another one that fits in that. My wife and I watched it this weekend. Sunday. I was kind of in the feeling of the mood for 80s movies, so we watched Beverly Hills Cop, and then which was delightful. And then we watched Breakfast Club.
Oh yeah, that's a great one.
Breakfast Club. I watch it every couple years, but
it's a long movie, too.
It's a long movie, but it is aged very well. Yeah. I think the archetypes of each one of the rich girl, the angry outcast, the mousy outcast, the athlete, the geek, nerdy, those archetypes are eternal. It's probably John Hughes' best film. He did Ferris Bueller's Day Off, 16 Candles, Pretty in Pink, Uncle Buck, some other ones. And I was watching that thing, and this was 100% high school when I was in. I was thinking of that movie when I was listening to The Cure 2 days later, and I asked my wife, "Was this way high school?" She said, "Absolutely." And I imagine it still is that way, but the issues that he's trying to address, I mean, I was watching it just feeling guilt of like, man, I was 100% on this stuff, and I wasn't a jock necessarily, so I would say I was at the top of the pecking order, but I was certainly part of the group that was in, categorizing people and not associating with certain people because they were from some kind of group, and if you did, you were not cool, or you were going to get cooties or something. There's something wrong with you if you're associating with them. So, but boy, it has aged very well. Yeah. A lot of movies from the 80s don't, but that one has. Okay, we'll do What the X. It's going to be What the X that then leads to the main topic. You want me to read the tweet?
Yeah, go for it. Do we need to get a beer first?
Yeah, we'll get the beer first.
Cerveza.
All right.
It wasn't the second best can in there. The second best can was another Smog City, and I was like, oh, I can't do that too. I can't go back to back on that.
Yeah, and this one I've never even heard of, let alone had. This is Noble Ale Works, Anaheim, California. Established 2009. This is Dogs Are Noble. West Coast IPA 6.75. It has CTZ, Idaho 7, Waimea, Rawaka Keef, and Nelson Keef hops. Yeah.
We'll see how it goes.
Oh, it smells good. Oh. It smells like it's a treat.
Okay.
You were not at Kauai on Friday.
No,
So you missed out on Travis sharing with us a Smog City can, and he said you can keep that, and I was like, oh boy, and he said smell it. It smelled like a football field sized marijuana plant dispensary.
That's how
it was. So
that's how dank dust was.
And then you couldn't get it out of the flavor when you drink it. All you tasted was marijuana, and it said it was dank. And I was like, "That's herbal. That's more than dank."
No, that's just.
So he was like, he said he goes, the worst part is I got 3 cans at home, and I said, "Well, bring them next week and foist them on other people."
Yeah, I've had 2 beers that are like that. Dank dust. And I can't remember the other one. So if you see space dust, that's dank dust. That thing just tastes like you're drinking like bong water. Like that's what it tastes like. And I've never drank bong water. I've actually never partook of the devil's lettuce or marijuana.
Neither have I, but I know what it smells like.
I know what it smells like. And luckily, dank dust. I did not order an entire glass of that. Eric did at trivia night one night.
Oh, I remember this.
And I took a sip of it, and I literally was like burping up weed for like the next couple of hours. And I was like, "This is awful. This is terrible. I hate
better
this."
Get drug tested tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, "What is this?" Yeah, and the second it got brought to the table, and we thought somebody had literally just like smoked a joint. You could smell it from everywhere. Oh my gosh, it was crazy. So yeah, there you go.
This is delicious.
Yeah, it's good. I do taste the Nelson.
Just a little bit, though,
just a little bit,
and
it's like in the middle. It's like in the middle of the flavor palette. So if you take a sip and then like,
but I don't mind that Nelson flavor.
Before you get to the back end, there's like that Nelson kind of in the middle of your tongue. I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
All right, we now have 2 tweets.
What the heck?
Oh, great.
This one just popped up. This is from Kevin Young, Dr. Kevin Young. I don't know if I can say he's a friend of the show, but Randy Cole puts on Twitter, Matthew 5:17, red letters, Jesus came to fulfill the law, not abolish it. This includes laws in Leviticus 18:20. Young replies, you're wearing mixed fabrics in your profile picture, Randy. Repent, Leviticus 19:19.
Nice. How dare he? I think you're supposed to put him to death.
Oh, dear.
That's awesome.
Okay. So, I think it was 3 or 4 episodes ago, we got going on the topic of divorce, which we've talked about a couple times on the show, namely how the church, we don't feel, is handling it correctly by instructing usually females, but I'm sure this happens. Men probably don't talk about it, but I'm sure men are either instructed or they probably just feel the guilt and then just don't do it and sit in quiet desperation because of emotional, maybe verbal abuse they're getting at the house. Women, all of the above, maybe kind of abuse they're getting at home. And we've cited several instances, and I don't think that they're a small percentage, where pastors are saying, divorce is a sin, or divorce is an abomination, or in the one we read recently, it's a sin and you're going to get God's wrath if you get divorced. And so we've talked about how this is not a good, this is legalism at its worst, and you're treating one problem, you're worried about one problem to the extent to where the bigger sin is is keeping someone in that terrible relationship. I was already thinking, so there was a post on X by somebody that I thought was good, so that we could also have a discussion about, yes, the church needs to be less legalistic about divorce, but let's also not rush to this idea that divorce is also a good thing, and that yes, it might solve one problem, but let's not kid ourselves, it is gonna cause a lot of problems. And so I think there was this post that I think lays that out very well. It's kind of long, but here it goes. Divorce means you lay a generational curse on your family until someone with more integrity comes along to stop the cycle. Here are 10 uncomfortable truths about divorce. 1. Divorce, whatever the reason, is never to be celebrated. It is always a multi-layered, multi-generational tragedy. It will affect your children, no matter their age. And it will affect your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren. It flows downhill. A divorce will not lessen the fighting or strife in your life. It does nothing but bundle your pain, multiply it by 10, and strap it to the backs of your children. They'll carry it with them for the rest of their lives. 3. Children will put on a good face, and you'll be able to pretend everything is okay, that you, quote, made the right decision, unquote, but they are not okay. You force them to take responsibility for your own selfishness and failure. 4. A divorce is a murder. A husband and a wife are one flesh, and destroying it kills something that was alive and whole, dismembering it. I don't agree with this. You may think you are gaining your life back, but you're really losing it. Your kids know the truth, however. They feel the death. It's not murder. Divorce is contagious. Absolutely. Be careful who your friends are. Be careful who your wife's friends are. A divorce in one group of friends can start a slow motion chain reaction. If you think it could never happen to you, you are the most vulnerable. 6. Divorce will go off like a bomb in a child's life, no matter his or her age. Even if they are 30 years old and out of the house, they will feel ripple effects. It weighs them down. You can't contain the damage. Wisdom and maturity offer bandages, but not immunity. 7. Wherever you go, there you are. A divorce won't allow you to escape the source of your pain and problems because there you still are. 8. Divorce makes literally everything harder for your descendants. It haunts them. Children of divorced parents have 35 to 60% higher rate of divorce themselves, are twice as likely to drop out of high school, have a greater chance of living in poverty. Uh, that's another one where I'm not sure I agree. That's correlation and causation right there. Divorce also takes a hammer to the foundation of civilization. The more divorce, the less stability. The more divorce, the fewer men take on additional responsibility. And the more divorce in the future, it makes the slope steeper and more slippery. 10. Most marriages that ended in divorce could have been restored with peace, harmony, and intimacy. They just didn't know how, or they took the easy way out. If divorce hadn't been an option, other solutions would have presented themselves. So, thoughts? What do you want to do?
I don't really have thoughts on this. I think what'll be good will be if we go through what we're gonna do tonight is Tim is we've talked about it before that Tim is a part of a third marriage, right? Third.
Yes. My first, her third.
Right, and there are 3 children that are a part of
Correct.
Previous marriages. And so I think that Tim is going to be one of those people that's going to be great to speak to on this subject. So I don't really want to give a lot of my stuff. If you want to know my background is, and I do have some stuff to elaborate on, but I think it'll be better to elaborate as we go through and kind of as I ask you questions and that kind of stuff. I do have a background. I have taken up there with Bible classes is one of the top classes that I took. I was a liberal arts major, so I've actually taken a lot of child development classes, a lot of family and health classes as well in college. So I do have some experience knowing about what to look for when we're talking about childhood trauma and that kind of stuff. So speaking to kids and that kind of stuff. So I have some things that I'd like to unpack there. And especially speaking about divorce. But what we're going to do tonight is we're going to kind of talk with Tim and let Tim kind of explain, because Tim is going to be great for this because, one, Tim is not from a divorce relationship, but he's been able to see what a divorce does. He also currently has one of his children is most recently divorced, and so he can also talk about what that has done for her family and what he has seen through that process. As much as he wants to talk about, I don't really have like a lot of questions asking about that because I know that that's something that you may not want to elaborate on or whatever. And so that's fine. But I mean, I remember, I think we had talked about it on the show a couple nights ago, or maybe we talked about it outside. So like that first one where it said, divorce is not something to be celebrated, where you were adamant. You were like, you're not having a divorce party. Like,
Yeah.
And so that may be some things that we want to get into. But what Tim's going to do tonight, he's going to answer some questions. He doesn't know what I'm going to ask. Again, also what he also brings to this perspective is somebody who has grown up in the church, accepts church culture, knows really what has been acceptable when it comes to divorce, and then going out and marrying a divorced woman. And then how have they been able to, and what are some of the problems and challenges that they faced attending a church and being a part of this community that is oftentimes not pleasant towards those, and to put it lightly or mildly, that have been through that process, because again, it's that sinful nature kind of thing. And it's this physical manifestation of sin. regardless of the fact that 90% of the congregation watches porn or whatever, but that's neither here nor there. So, yeah. So, are you ready to get started?
Sure.
Okay. So, first question: what year did you get married? Let's start with good, happy stuff before we have to get into dark, hard,
2005.
2005.
So, I spent my 20s working my butt off.
Yeah, you were trying to live in LA.
I was living in LA first couple years. So 2 years. I spent my first year and a half at UCLA just working my butt off because my parents couldn't pay for school. I came from a lower middle class family, and my parents made just enough money that I didn't get any. I didn't get anything other than low interest loans. I didn't get any. I think I got one Pell Grant for like $750. So I had to basically pay for my way through UCLA. So several jobs. Year and a half in, started working at this company called All Sport, which was this sports photo agency. They had a job posting at the career center, which you could go into even if you weren't like a graduating senior, you're looking for a career. They just had like a part-time job board. And so, well, I know a little something about photography, and I love sports, so maybe this might be cool. So went and interviewed there the same week. The guy I played football for called me up and said, I need somebody to coach. I need a defensive coach. Okay, good. When does JV start? No, I want you on the varsity staff. Oh, okay. So I'm going to UCLA. Agree to be a part-time assistant football coach, and get this job at this place called All Sport. Incidentally, the day the day I'm supposed to start is the day of the Rodney King riots are in full swing. So I didn't start for a full week after because I was living in Hollywood, and I had been vacated from my house, kicked out of my house by the National Guard because it was right in the middle of all the
martial law.
So anyway, so I worked there. I'm working full-time. Well, almost full-time at that job, still going to school and coaching both fall. I mean, it was mostly year-round. So I'm working myself like a dog. That continued until when I left that place to start a competing business. I coached one more year and then said I can't keep trying to run this new business and coach. So I quit coaching, but didn't stop working any less, was probably working. I mean, I pretty much worked, because it was 2 or 3 jobs, 80 hours a week from my 20s till I was about 32, 33. And then the business finally settled down, and I didn't just decide, like, I'm ready to date. It was like, okay, it's now time to get settled down and marry. Like, I wasn't interested in doing any, like, the dating scene, and I wasn't like gonna rush out and get me like marry the first girl I met, but it was any of the dating that I did for the couple, probably 6 or 7 months before I met my wife. It was very clear, like, nope, that person's not gonna be it. I'm not wasting any more time and money on this person. They
Right.
might have been, and I was very open with them, like, no, I'm looking for a serious relationship. And,
Yeah.
if they were interested in a serious relation, yeah, married her. Met her in 2002-ish, 2003, and then 2003, and then got married in 2005.
Nice. So you get married in 2005. We have kind of that background. First off, just talking about the dating experience, which again you didn't want to be a part of, but what was your initial reaction to Danica being divorced twice before?
Okay, this is great. So, I had a moment I had a grand moment of clarity sometime in my late 20s. And I don't remember why. I think I had a friend who was dating, was probably listening to too much Love Line, Dr. Drew, and
Dr. Fraser.
I made a declaration to God that I would never marry a single mom with children. So I tell people all the time when it's appropriate to tell that story. Yeah, be careful about telling God what you're going to do, because he often, I think, we're kind of loosey goosey on the show, kind of how much God involves himself. I do think there's a level of, okay, all right, that's what you think, but
I appreciate you doing that better than like how the cheesy old pastor says it on a Sunday morning. If you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans.
No, I think.
So I appreciate you at least not saying that. I was like, oh no, Tim, please don't say it.
No. If you want to put it less.
No, I thought it was fine. If you feel like I'm like raking you over the coals for that, that's fine.
Well, I think the better way to put. I think that's kind of how you said it and how I kind of skirted around it. I think that's sort of that's the Old Testament, I think, or even like I would say that's the ancient view of how God works, and I think where you and I chafe at how we read the Bible, and maybe we're just as deluded because we have a modern view, and so our view's out of. But you and I view the book more as, no, I think it's not God doubling down or deciding that he's going to show that he's got a sense of humor. It's that God's going to show that you have gifts that you weren't aware of, or that you were aware of but you didn't. And I think that's what it is for me in this case. That you kind of were aware of and you were using, but you just didn't think that they would apply to this instance. And by that I mean, one of the things that that benefited me from coaching was I quickly realized that I have the gift of being pretty emotionally intuitive to other people.
Yeah.
Now, if you know me well, that does not mean socially intuitive. Those are two different things. One can be an ass in social circles, sometimes intentionally, but no, I think I'm very good at figuring out what makes people tick, and not in a manipulative way, and then trying to connect with that person. In the case of coaching, yes, to get them to what you want them to do. And so for me, it was I quickly figured out as a coach, like, okay, this kid does not respond to yelling. He crawls up like a baby, probably because his dad or mom and dad yell at him at home. So that's not responsive. So you got to be affirming, This kid thrives on yelling. So dish everything you can at him, because he just wants to know. He wants to know that he's not doing what he's supposed to do. Just let him have it. And so a lot of stuff like that, where you just figure out how to really get the most out of people by how they work emotionally. And then, that started carrying over into work when you're working with, in my case, 100, sometimes 200, 300 contractors. They all act differently. And if you just treat them all the same, you get yourself into trouble, and I still do. But you've got to really learn how people function and motor. And so that never occurred to me that might be not just a skill in any situation as a parent or as a spouse, but in this particular situation that I was going to find myself in.
And so when she said it, what was like you were like,
that wasn't the stumbling block. The stumbling block was that I was living in Santa Clarita. That's North Los Angeles. And she lived in this little shit town called Tular. And I'd been through Tular 2 years before when I was taking the football kids up to. We were doing summer camp at Pat Hill's Fresno State football camp, and we drove through this little shithole of a town that just had a craft foods factory right on the 99 freeway that was called Tular. And there was no way in hell I was dating some lady 2.5 hours north or 2 hours north from Tular. So yes, my wife and I met on a dating site. So initially, I think it was the equivalent of
Christian Mingle.
it was kind of a Christian site. She and I can't remember the name of it. But she had sent me, I think they called it a wink. So, and I was like, nope. So it just kind of sat there, and then I want to say like a month went by, and I was like, what the hell? I haven't gone on a date for a while. So, I mean, what's the worst? I can have a conversation with somebody online. So, I don't remember what I don't honestly don't remember. I'm sure I was like, I'm not getting involved in that. I'm not, because there was somebody else that I had gone out on a date with before that, and we were at dinner, and she was like, "Yeah, I'm a single mom."
Tim was like, "Check."
And I was
please.
like, "Nope, yep, I'm out. I'm out." Nope.
What ended up happening in this situation was Tim got drunk and he was lonely, and it was like, "Yeah, I'll text her back at 9:00."
Well, I think it was because in the first situation, she was she wasn't like 18, but she was a 24, and I could tell mid 20, and not mature single mom. Danica didn't have that vibe about her.
Yeah. How old were both of you guys when you got married?
32, around 30, yeah. Early 30s.
When you knew that Danica was the one for you, what was your concerns for entering a marriage with her? As far as, again, that kind of divorce
well, I was
situation.
okay. So I wasn't worried about her. Well,
there weren't any concerns that you had.
My concerns, I didn't have too many concerns with her.
Well, it wasn't. I'm not saying necessarily with her.
No, I know.
Yeah.
She seemed like she'd gotten. So she'd been married twice before. She'd gotten married in high school, and then married again, and been recently divorced. And so I went into that. So I went into my relationship with her just being like, I'm going to be the guy who's not the drama guy. Like, if you tell me you don't want to talk for a week, I won't. Then I'll I'm over being the 18-year-old petulant boy who's like, what do you mean you don't want to talk to me? Like, who else are you seeing? It was like, you don't want to talk to me? That's fine. I get it. You got a lot of stuff going on. You got a job. You got 3 kids.
So you're not Phil from Modern Family.
Exactly. But if I'm gonna be here for you.
Yeah.
Kids, on the other hand. So Jeff, the youngest, was 4.5 when I met him. He was young enough that I wasn't too worried about him, although I did have to sit down and have a conversation with him probably when he was 5 or 6, but it was a point where I figured, even though he was little, he could comprehend what I was saying. And I sat him down really quickly. Jeff never gave me any of the mouth of, you're not my dad. I don't remember him ever doing that. I sat him down because I wanted the opposite to happen. I sat him down and wanted to make it clear to him it wasn't his job to choose.
Yeah.
So I sat him down and said, your dad is always going to be your dad. Now I'm marrying your mother, or I was married to, I'm married to your mother. And so I'm your dad. I'm your dad also. So when you're in this house, you respect me. And
Yep.
when you're over there, you respect him. And oh, by the way, when you're over there, you don't say anything bad about me. And when you come here, I don't want you saying anything bad about him, because I wanted him to know it's not his job to choose sides.
Right.
And this isn't a binary thing of, well, I gotta do one or the other. Now, I said that knowing that meant that the guy on the other side had to play ball.
Right.
I don't think I ever heard anything one way or another, whether he did or not. But Jeff never exhibited anything really. Has never exhibited anything. He did a good job of, like, there was never, you're not my dad anyway. So
I had a relationship with Jeff before. I had a relationship with Jeff before I had a relationship with you, and so I can say that. Honestly, I've never heard Jeff say anything bad about you, and I mean, and yeah, and like, I'm 5 years older than Jeff, but like, he would have said something if there was ever, like, people talk about their step parents.
right.
No problem. Like, they have no problems. Does he call you dad? Or does he call you Tim?
He doesn't call me. No, he didn't call me. He doesn't call me Tim.
He calls you dad?
Yeah.
Okay. Because he would always say, occasionally, he would say, I'm at my dad's.
Sometimes,
But
yeah,
he would call you dad too. So that's always where I was.
Yeah. Well, so
Because usually some kids make a distinction, right? Like, they'll sit there and they'll say, they'll be like, oh, that's my dad. And then they'll be like, oh, that's not my dad. And they'll usually call them by their first name. I had a water polo student that's my mom, and that's Trish.
right.
And Trish has been in his life since he was 5 years old. So like, that's kind of part of it where, again, some kids make that distinction. They buck against the step parent and all that kind of stuff. So, but I can't say that I've honestly ever heard Jeff buck against you as a step parent. I can't speak for the other two because I didn't know them growing up, but you know.
No, usually people. It depended on the setting. Like within church settings, probably I think most people, because his dad was never there. Just because, I mean, his dad, when he went to church, went to the Catholic church, so that it wasn't so much like, oh, his dad doesn't go to church or something like that. It was just more of, his dad wasn't ever involved in the church we were going to, so a lot of people never even knew that I wasn't his dad because he referred to me as dad. He would only refer to me as stepdad when things became a little, like, where he had to clarify, like at school, because the teacher had a meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Curley, but then also Mr. Silva. Oh, okay, I see. So then, then Jeff's got to start being, he had to like choose his language of like, I got to go to my stepdad's or my dad's, but it was never like a thing of like, he's just my stepdad, shut up. No, it was always just using language to delineate like,
but I think
which one he's referring to.
But I think that was really good for Jeff as far as, because like I said, I think it's very difficult for kids when they kind of buck against their step parent. They go through there's a lot of internal struggles that they go through in high school that they really shouldn't be having to deal with, where it's like, oh, they don't like me, or they're telling me what to do when they shouldn't have any say over what it is.
Okay, so that brings us to the to the daughter.
We'll go.
And I think, look, if you're listening to this, particularly if you're listening to this and you're younger and you got the mentality that I do, like I'm never inserting myself. You can navigate this if you do it intentionally, and you do it, I think, with some. I would actually hope some people listen to this and say like, "Oh, this is doable," because to the point of the post that we read to start, this can be the cycle can be broken, but it takes someone stepping in and breaking the cycle. So, and we're going to stop right there for commercial break, and then when we come back, I will then talk about the other child.
Next one.
Oh, the other Smog City.
I know. I like that can.
Oh, it's a
It's a collab.
it's a collab. So beer number 3. Beer number 1.5.
Yes.
Another Smog City, but it's a collaboration with Ogopogo Brewing.
Ogopogo. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it is.
And I'm not going to bother looking up Ogopogo. I imagine they're probably in Los Angeles area. So this is the First Stride IPA, 7.2%. And doesn't say what it's using.
San Gabriel.
Oh, San Gabriel. Well, okay. So it's Pasadena. It's east of Pasadena. And if you don't know where Pasadena is, go to hell.
I hear they got a pretty mediocre college football stadium there.
Oh, yeah. Outdated piece of crap.
Yeah, so this is also, did you say the percentage on it?
Was it 7.2?
7.2.
I think it says West Coast, but there's some mention of hazy on there.
An IPA that defies reality. We invite you to saddle up and embark on a fantastical journey with First Stride West Coast IPA, featuring an exciting concoction of Laurel, Amarillo, Idaho 7, and Citra hops. First Stride delivers an enchanting melange of wild strawberry and tropical aromas, grapefruit tang, and a bright, juicy finish, proving that perfection is possible. Your journey doesn't end here. Ride on and discover Hetera Hazy IPA, Ogopogo's mythical submission in this dynamic collaboration. So there's a hazy collab that they have as well.
I don't taste or smell the strawberry, but I trust it's there. Everything else I do.
Oh, I kind of like smell strawberry, honestly. Hopefully I don't have an allergic reaction.
I don't have the best. If we really wanted to nail this, we'd have Abigail on the show every week, because she'd be like, "Oh, I smell this and I smell that." I'm just, all right, now you're just making stuff up.
I'm getting. Is that?
What was it? I had a beer and she ruined it for me. I took a. Oh, it was one of the. It was one of the beers we brought back from Santa Rosa, and she said, "Oh, it was it was one I had shipped from Cooperage. It was their Dortmund, their gold-winning Dortmund lager, and I poured it out, and she goes, I smell banana." I was like, that's it. You just ruined it. That's it. Whatever I smelled it didn't equate with banana, but you just said banana. Now that's it. I'm done with it.
Just so you know, we did whiskey tastings 2021. So 3 years ago. Was that 3 years ago now? 4 years? No, 3 years ago. It was 3 years ago. We did whiskey tasting. So a fun fact for whiskey tasters, or bourbon tasters especially, they're always going to ask you, "What do you smell?" And you can always sound really sophisticated if you like bourbon at home. Just always go, on the nose I'm getting caramel.
And cherries.
And yeah, cherry.
Like buttery toffee.
Yeah, buttery toffee. Yeah, it's bourbon. It's a sweet whiskey. And if you say vanilla, I'm getting a little bit of vanilla almost. Yeah. You could say that for every bourbon ever.
This isn't single malt.
Yeah, you're just like, oh man, this is what I'm getting off on the nose or whatever. So
this isn't a single malt.
If you ever have a rye and you taste it and you want to like impress people, just be like, that's peppery, ain't it? Like it's got a little like pepper kind of thing to it.
If you say you smell cherries, it better have been finished in a port cast.
And what's super funny is that the people that give you the whiskey tours, they'll 100% lean in and tell you that. They're like, every single time that you try this, you can sit there and sound intelligent by sitting there and saying that.
Well, I look forward to going to Kentucky and saying it smells like every other bourbon that I've smelled, and it's spectacular.
Yeah, exactly.
So that they're like, "Oh, okay, no, I'm not offended."
Yeah, exactly.
It does smell better than this one. Okay. So
caramel.
Yeah. So once this became serious, I was having to assess each kid, and I've been honest with my daughter about it, and certainly was with my wife. She was the middle, the daughter. She was, I think, 13, 14.
That's a rough year, by the way.
So, yeah, she's in junior high. She's coming out. She's going into junior high, if I remember right. It's going into junior high. Again, I've watched enough. I've listened to enough Loveline late at night, going home from work, my office to home to go to sleep, or did really well in my psychology classes at UCLA. Which is, let me go back. When I was in high school, my friends and I just incessantly mocked psychology as this fake science.
That's hilarious.
And then when I took a class, I couldn't get enough of it. I was like, oh, this is like, I think I've said this on the show before in previous episodes. It was like a codec had been exposed to me, and now all of the things that I didn't see in the world are like, oh, okay.
Which is so cool. There's a cool element of psychology. If nobody's taken a psych class that's listening to this, there's a cool element of psychology where human beings are so alike and we don't realize it.
Correct.
There's random ass shit that we do that we feel like is just like a random thing that we go through, and it's like, nope. A majority of people go through that, or
Correct.
there's a large group of you enough to do that they've done studies on that or whatever, and it's just like, oh, that's crazy, that's weird, kind of, in like it's just kind of a cool, fun thing to learn about your brain and the process that it goes through and how you learn, and how that affects what it is that you do in your life. So it's just kind of a fun class to take. So
just I'm more of a youngest than I am a Freudian, but
yeah. It's also why it's the second most popular major in college. Not because kids go into college wanting to take psych. A lot of kids don't choose psychology as their major, but it's once they take a psych class, because it's one of those prelim classes.
Yeah.
All of a sudden they switch their majors because they're like, oh, that was a lot of fun, and that was really
I think it's
interesting.
like I took it as a joke. I'm like, all right, fine, I'll take this witchcraft class and bumble my way through it. And like 2 lectures in, I'm like, oh boy, I was wrong about this. This is actually pretty spot on. The joke I tell with
and don't get me wrong, if anybody's still thinking about Freud and all of this, like Freud is kind of viewed as a quack.
He is a quack. I am serious. Jung, I think, was a lot more spot on. But even then, we're talking about 2 German.
And there are when it comes to Freud, and so we don't like to fully discredit him. But like you take surface level stuff, and it was actually because of Freud pushing those boundaries and suggesting all these theories and hypotheses that psychology was able to expand in the early 1900s.
Oh, sure, he was a necessary quack to take it to the next
100%,
level. And
100%.
He's not completely wrong, but
he
got overly idolized in the late 20th century.
And isn't and Dr. Fraser Crane is like a Freudian guy.
He's a Freudian guy.
A Freudian, and it's so funny.
Jordan Peterson's a Jungist. He talks about Jung a lot. The joke I tell, it's not really a joke though. It's 100% true, unfortunately, and it's not my joke. It's actually Adam Carolla's joke. If you're not familiar with Loveline, it was a syndicated show. It started in Los Angeles at this the world famous K-Rock, which is it used to be a very good radio station. I mean, most radio stations are dead, but K-Rock was a famous radio station in Los Angeles that broke. I think it's still around, but it's just not what it was. The reputation it had in the 80s, 90s, 2000s was, they broke. They were the first people to put Van Halen on the radio. They put No Doubt on the radio. There's probably like 20 artists you can name that they put on the radio that no one ever, when the radio folks, when the record people are coming in like pitching albums, they're like, oh, well, we got this one thing, but we don't think you're gonna want it. And they're like, no, that's what we want. So anyway, late night they had a syndicated show with Dr. Drew. I can't remember Drew's last name. If you're not familiar with him,
is this the like start of like Sleepless in Seattle?
No. Look, Google Dr. Drew, and you've probably seen him before on something else. But anyway, so people call in with their, it's like an advice show, but the joke, not joke, that Adam Carolla told to illustrate how, to your point, how similar human beings are, and how good Drew was at, it's a little bit of quackery to be giving people advice over the radio and not in person, but invariably every night you're driving home, you'd hear, "Hi, I'm Amber. I'm 15. All right, Amber. What's your question?" Yeah, been dating my boyfriend for 2 months, and he wants to do anal. Okay, and I'm not comfortable with it. Okay, let me ask you, Amber, how many piercings do you have? 4. Do you have any tattoos? Well, no, not yet, but I'm blah blah blah. A couple more questions. Okay, so who abused you? No, I've never been abused. And invariably, you would end up where someone in the family had sexually abused her.
Right.
And again, it's a cliche, but it's a cliche because it would just, like, Drew could pick them out. And it wasn't every single time, but he, right away, and just be like, and the reason why he wasn't trying to expose this poor girl, and sometimes it was, 19, 20-year-old girls, wasn't trying to expose them on the radio. It was just like, no, this is someone who's a predator. They might not know that you've been abused, but they're sensing it.
Yeah.
And they're trying to push you, and because sexually abused kids are more likely than to be like, that's what I have to do in order to see love, don't feed into that.
Right.
And then let's go get some help. So, all that to say, none of that was going on in this situation. But my daughter, 100%, that was the one. She's the one I got to worry about. One, because her biological dad wasn't around hardly ever. The second...
Christina's from the first marriage.
Christine's from the first marriage. Jeff's from the second. The second dad wasn't very nice to her. So I'm thinking, all right, the last thing she's looking for is another dude showing up in the house. Like, I am not going to be her friend at all, for a long time. Yeah. And in fact, in order for me to earn her trust, I need to go out of my way to not be earning her trust. Yeah. I just need to be hands off.
Yeah.
To the point where I went very quickly, told Danica, look, if you want me to intervene with Christina, I will. But I think you need to handle her as much as you can. So again, if things get
and not that you were avoiding conflict, if Christina were to do something,
I would have had no problem stepping in and saying, shut your mouth, sit your ass down, your mother's talking to you, or go to your room and shut the hell up.
And if Danica's not around, it's not like you're just gonna submissive.
No.
Just allow whatever.
But it was, if there was a major thing, I'm gonna be there and I'm gonna be right there with you.
Yeah. But
I'm not gonna be the one. It's gonna be better. I mean, she's a teenage girl, so it wasn't much better with Danica. But the last thing she needed was another dude coming in, trying to assert himself as sheriff of the household. And so I was as standoffish as I could be.
Yeah.
When I needed to, I'd step in. The other thing I told Danica very on with all three of them. Don't say anything bad about them, the dad, in my presence when they're around. I would prefer you not say anything, even if they're deadbeats about their dads anyway. But don't say it in front of me, because then it looks like you're trying to use me, as the sounding board. And again, I'm trying to eliminate as much division and not division. I'm trying to eliminate people picking sides in teams. I'm team this. I'm team that. I'm team dad. I'm team stepdad. I'm team Tim. I'm team dad A or B. And establish I'm not the drama guy.
Yeah.
By the same token, I'm also the guy who's not going to leave. So, and I never got it from any of the kids, but if any of them had said, "You're not my dad," or they're like, "All right, well, that's not my problem because I'm not. I don't really give two shits anyway. I'm married to your mom." So,
Right.
which if you're hearing that and you think that that's harsh, look, parents, that should be your mentality towards your own biological children.
Right.
I'm married to your mom. Like, you're an afterthought in the grand scheme of things.
Right.
And again, if you think that's harsh, no. Children actually need to know that. I think children who know that mom and dad are number one at the hip, there's no way of dividing one against the other, any of that. That is a way to raise healthy children who know how the world's supposed to work. But if you engage that, and so that was one of the things we did. One of the things I did was it was made clear to them by both of us, all three of them, don't ever, this is kind of a common household thing, but this is a big deal when you're dealing with new guy on the block. Don't ever pull a shit where you ask one and then you don't get the answer you like and go ask somebody else. Yeah. So don't go to your mom because mom's the stuffy one and you think Tim's the cool one in the case of the older ones and say, well, can I go do this? Did you ask your mom? Well, I didn't. She wasn't around or something like that. Don't ever pull that because if you do that, that's up there with like the biggest things you can do.
Right.
We don't do that.
Right.
So with her, I handled her very hands off, but just did everything I with all three of them. The rule was, I think with all three of them, the big thing was I need to be the first person who treats their mom the way they should be treated.
Yeah. And
then everything else will kind of will kind of work itself out. So Jeff doesn't need to lash out at me because you're only my stepdad because you know what? He's treating my mom well. She seems pretty happy. Good enough for me. Even 5-6-year-old Jeff can figure that out.
Yeah.
Christina, this guy doesn't seem like the other two. He's not mistreating her, so he's probably not being a jerk to me, even though I don't like, that he's agreeing with my mom on what, this and that to do. Timmy was a different matter. Timmy was the one that I had to be the most standoffish with, and I probably still the most standoffish with. He's the oldest. Again, when he was living with Danica when I met Danica and we got married, and then around that time he decided he wanted to go live with his dad because he figured out freshman, sophomore in high school. Tim's one of the smartest people I know. And the kid's just super sharp. He figured out real quick. I want to move in with Dad because Dad's never around. If I go move in there, I got free range. I'm a free range chicken for my high school years.
Right.
And it was one of those things where we could fight it, and then he'd live in the house and be resentful, or he could just go off and live there and kind of just eventually figured out like, okay, this is great, but then there's not much nurturing or meaningful relationship going on.
Right.
So so that's generally how I handled the kids.
Right, and so you would say that was probably your biggest challenge entering into the marriage, and like one of your biggest concerns that you were just like, all right, this is, and I don't think that that's far-fetched to sit there and say there are 3 children, a variety of ages that I'm coming into this relationship with and needing to figure out how it is that we're going to be raising these kids moving forward now that I'm a part of the picture, right? Would you agree?
I would agree, and I would, I said a few minutes ago, I would love it if more people would step up and enter those situations, but I also know that's a tall task, and I also know, I think I have a gift, and by that I literally mean like I have an innate gift that God gave me and I was smart enough to figure it out. But it wasn't like, oh, I'm really smart, and I took a couple of psychology classes. When I'm talking about, I took classes at UCLA and listened to Loveline. It's really a joke. I go back to more what I was talking about when I was coaching and figured out I'm emotionally intuitive. I can pretty much figure out when someone walks into a room. It's like, now's not the time to be a wise ass, or there's 2 or 3 times where Danique and I we've been married. Oh dear, was it coming up on 20 years? There's
20 years.
3 nasty fights we've had our entire relationship, and both times it's because we both started arguing, and Tim's got an asshole side when winning the argument becomes the thing that needs to happen. And so I turn in debate club asshole, and I start twisting words and this, that, and the other. And then when I get frustrated, I just keep taking it up to the next level. And so other than that, we rarely fight. And part of that's just understanding, like, this is not an important thing that I care about. So there's no reason to get in an argument about it. Like, would I prefer to do this? Yeah, but she clearly cares more about this. So it's no skin off my nose to just agree.
Yeah.
We thank you for listening to part 1 of Divorce, Brokenness, and Grace. Please join us next week for episode 2. As always, subscribe, rate, and review the Go to Hell podcast wherever you listen so others can find the show. If you enjoy toxic femininity, go to hell.